When's the last record that made you feel like the energy of Not Like Us? Have we had a hip hop record since then?
It seems like every single year that passes, the hip hop genre continues to decline, especially for the mainstream.
Yo, all of you are unoriginal. Every one of y'all is making the same thing. There's no new ideas, no new concept, there's no new sound. It's the same. It's all the same.
Right? It's literally like almost every mainstream rapper that put out an album this year, you could argue, put out the worst album of their career. Like it's like fall off after fall off.
It might be hard to believe now, but there was once a time where being a rapper seemed like one of the coolest jobs on earth. Infinitely cool, charismatic, and larger than life itself, but kind of remote and untouchable as if they existed in their own universe. Becoming a rapper was something inspirational for the common urban kid to dream of, but never think of reaching. From stories of Jay-Z being so supremely talented that he didn't need to write down a single verse, to 50 Cent's story of being shot 9 times only to survive and take over hip-hop, there was a genuine feel that becoming a rap superstar was not for mere mortals. Now, they've become a sad, dated, unfunny joke without a punchline. Fuel for 1,000 memes on the internet, mocked and belittled for their clumsy attempts to preach, pander, and carry favor with the very people they look down on. Their flaws, shortcomings, and insecurities have never been so clear for the world to see. Take the big three. Let's not forget, Kendrick laid his entire soul bare and told the world that he was not our savior on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
I think this is a Hello, I'm Steelo, by the way, if you care. Thank you for making this in. I'm going to make this very brief and go back into the video. This is a multi-layered issue. It's not just the artists involved, but it's the industry itself. So they were putting a lot more funding and a lot more artist development into these artists in a way they're not doing now. So TikTok has a large stake in this, where they felt like you had to go do TikTok. And there was a lot of artists who were saying, I'm not doing TikTok. I'm not being a content creator. I'm an artist. So all the artists that you try to push this new marketing campaign on because you didn't want to spend the dollars on marketing, developing, and all these different things, working the record. There's no more street teams working the record. There's no more quality videos and that money's being put into branding. A lot of these things are non-factor in this era. So all the artists that were into that, you did not put the funding into them and did not believe in their projects until they got hot on TikTok, right? So in the slide before that, where you had Eminem, you had Jigga, and you had 50. Well, Jigga didn't put out his first album until 26. For today's era, for today's time, if you did not put out your first album and you were 26, you would be considered a failure and considered radioactive. So you would have to go independent. So there's a lot of artists that have gone independent and have put out really good albums this year. You know, Larry June, I believe for the most part, is independent. Joey Badass put out a good hip hop album. Alfredo, the latest Alfredo with Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist, great album. The Clips are recently independent. They put out a good album. They had a buyout of their contract. So there's good hip hop around. But I won't deny the fact that the Kendrick and Drake debacle had a lot it dominated so much of hip hop talking points, hip hop attention, that I think a lot of labels, A&Rs and artists in general did not want to drop for fear of being overshadowed. If you look at Big Sean, if you care about Big Sean at all, you may not. He was getting ready to, really start his marketing and really jump back out there. He had his book and he had a freestyle, and then Euphoria jumped off. And it's just like, with the landscape of hip hop the way it is right now, there isn't enough space for originality because there isn't enough dollars involved. And because of streaming and streaming giants and so many other ways to make money, there wasn't as many ways to make money for these artists back in the early 2000s and 90s. Like, he was either hoop or play ball. Like, what else was you gonna, do something illegal? But there's so many different avenues for artists to make money. And there is no money in streaming. There's no money in music unless you sell a product. So unless you become a salesman, a content creator, a marketing, like, you have to do all these different things in order to be successful in hip hop. It's taken the joy out of it for a lot of artists. And you would essentially be doing it as a hobby. You'd be doing it as a passion project. And there's a lot of people in the underground that are doing it as passion projects. And there's a lot of rappers that are in the underground that are doing it as passion projects. Depending on what the underground you speak of. You can speak of in the new terms, in terms of like Destroy Lonely and all that, but they're no longer anybody that's adjacent to like the Cardi sound, the Playboy Cardi sound, that's underground. And then also drumless rap would be the other side of underground. But and a lot of young acts that would probably be the rippling effect in making these differences, they died early, whether or they got taken out early, whether it's jail, drugs, or they met the grave early. That also killed the progression of hip hop and the excitement. And a lot of the newer acts, they're not cutting through. So it's a lot of factors. All right, back into the video. Just want to say
Then, in 2024's Watch the Party Die, he doubled down, proclaiming that hip-hop had to be torn apart and rebuilt from the ground up. And by 2025, on the Clips' Chains and Whips, he didn't hold back, spitting, "Let's be clear, hip-hop died again." Meanwhile, J. Cole has specifically made a point of shedding every bit of his superstar status in order to bike around New York like a Deliveroo driver, all the while seemingly planning his exit from the game with the Fall Off album. Then we have Drake, who's found himself in
JID also dropped a great album. There's great hip hop all around, but all right, go back. My fault. I'm gonna let the video play.
a unique spot where he's constantly having his dirty laundry aired out in public. With his
Nick Jenkins too dropped a good album. All right, I mean it this time. I'm gonna let it flow.
interactions on the internet proving that he's every bit as petty, vindictive, and in need of validation as anyone else. All the while, his every attempt to generate a hit has seemingly failed to resonate with audiences like it once used to. From Lil Wayne staining his legendary Carter series with The Carter 6, to Joey Badass underperforming commercially resulting in the cancellation of his tour, to Young Thug delivering what might go down as one of the worst comebacks in hip-hop history, the point is clear. The whole cult of musicians that used to be such a big, powerful part of our culture really feels like it's dying out these days. But to be honest, it was kind of inevitable that this was going to happen sooner or later, because the world we live in is changing, and so is the way we see entertainers. So what exactly happened? Well, let's start with the most important factor, and that's aura. This is the air that rappers used to carry, which made them easy to idolize. They didn't seem like they'd gone through the same process of growing up as we all did. Instead, it felt like they came out fully formed as these special identities.
They also didn't have the internet, so you're one tweet away, one post away from completely ruining your image. They didn't have this. They had to go to a publication which was curated. So, and you do like a Vibe magazine interview, a Source interview, a XXL interview, a MTV. A lot of those things could be edited. Like your publicist or somebody like from the label will look over and be like, "Nah, you can't put that out. You can't put this feature out. You can't do this because it's gonna ruin your rollout of your album, which is gonna ruin the product, which is gonna ruin our money. We're not doing it. It's not of that. It's a lot more. It's a lot more freer in that, you know, Thug back in the day, an artist like Thug would have not had access to his Twitter to do things like this. He wouldn't have the liberty to get on a podcast and completely ruin his reputation the way he's doing it. It just wouldn't be a possibility. But yeah, it's a lot easier to ruin your reputation, your credibility in this era.
And when you did hear of their backstories, it was easy to see why. You had people like Lil Wayne who'd been rapping since he was a kid and almost lost his life at his own hand with a 9mm, only for a cop to miraculously save his life, and in turn, ensure that hip-hop wasn't deprived of one of its brightest talents in history. From there, Weezy went on to become the best rapper alive, a self-proclaimed Martian who infamously discarded the rhyme book and spent the rest of his career freestyling off the dome. And much like Jay-Z,
Swagger Like Us, that's a Swagger Like Us verse.
even today, he's managed to retain his status as a king among rappers, with people genuinely wondering whether they'd be better served taking a dinner with Hove over $250,000. But Wayne wasn't the only one who cheated death prior to his rap career
Take the goddamn money.
either. Because back before he was a TV tycoon, Curtis Jackson was just a rapper on the come up who also endured a superhero origin story level of physical trauma. While attempting to evade the street life that had defined his earlier years, 50 was shot 9 times outside his grandma's house. And
Can I add this point? I apologize. I'm gonna let it flow again because 50 Cent is on the screen, so it sparked an epiphany. A lot of these new artists don't have to go through as much struggle to get on as they did. Now it's a struggle to maintain it. It's a lot more because the audience is a lot more fickle than they were because the attention is split. We're in an attention economy. We're also in a vibe economy, and nobody wins in a vibe economy. Shout out to Mools from the Rap Rankings podcast. When everything is the vibe and it's devoid of substance, nobody wins in a vibe economy. It's just true. So in this era, they didn't have to struggle as much. Like you are one viral moment, meme, TikTok, tweet from actually having attention and access at your fingertips. i.e. Ice Spice, right? You can be a moment and you can have a cool 9 months, but outside of that, it's going to be a little bit harder to maintain. With 50 and with Jigga's been able to maintain his aura even until this point, because he doesn't tweet as much. We don't see or hear from him as much. The more we see and hear from you, the less we value you. I'm gonna be honest with you. From a musician, if you want your music to just be your art and your aura, you got to talk and tweet less. Now, when we don't know the story or the mystery, we don't know much about what happened. We just know that 50 got shot 9 times and he survived. You look like a warrior. You look mad cool. But if 50 would have got on a podcast after that and was like, like, I did this to this, and then video footage would have came out and this and that. Now, it's a case by case situation, because video evidence came out about Rick Ross that he was a correctional officer and he was able to survive that. So it may just come down to personality and charisma. Once we learn, if we learn enough about you that you're not who you say you are, hip hop is still very big on authenticity, and originality. So if you don't have originality, at least have authenticity. If we look into your records and we look into everything else and we see that you're a fraud, why would we want to believe you anyways? So just like the singers of this era, a lot of people saying they're not going to church and not learning the foundations. Our rappers of today are just not struggling enough. I'll be honest with you. There's not enough struggle in it.
This label at the
Everybody wants to be a venture capitalist. Everybody wants to do OnlyFans. Nobody really wants to do it because there's no incentive. There's no incentive. It's going to continue to be a vibe economy, and we're going to bounce from one artist to the next. And I'm gonna be one to tell you, after the big 3 retires, Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole, at least, fade off into the spotlight. Who's going to be the next to really? We haven't developed anybody. That's going to be a scary sight.
time dropped him, the marketing team behind Shady Aftermath took this tale of escaping with his life and turning tragedy into triumph and made it indivisible from his rhymes. Besides that, it was parlayed into a blockbuster film, Get Rich or Die Trying, which chronicled his come up. But he wasn't the only one to get this treatment either. 50's mentor, Eminem, led the way in this regard, with 8 Mile becoming an Academy Award-winning movie, which chronicled his journey from the trailer park to acceptance in hip-hop. From Andre 3000 carrying himself like an interdimensional being from Atlanta, to Kanye surviving a car crash to prove all the naysayers wrong and become a genre-shifting superstar, there is still something about that era which is just incompatible with what we see today. Basically, artists used to have lore, or at least a sense of gravitas that meant you bought into their story hook, line, and sinker, whereas today, that simply doesn't happen. Today, if a rapper claimed that the tragic death of their brother meant that they'd sworn revenge on hip-hop and would become its ultimate supervillain, he'd get clowned within an inch of his life. But that's basically the origin story of the masked icon, MF Doom.
They would tell him to slide for your homie, and then you be facing a RICO and a murder for hire case.
Similarly, if a rap crew of today merged their music with a succession of clips from old kung fu movies, they'd probably be labeled as weebs or just plain old nerds. Instead, Wu-Tang Clan used their fanaticism for these old productions to make a mythology around their music, which fascinates people to this day. So what changed? For starters, back then consumers were willing to accept rappers at face value, and when it comes to how their image was managed, there was a much larger emphasis placed on creating a sense of grandiosity around everything they do. Just look at the budgets that were given for advertising and, more specifically, music videos. Back in the 90s and 2000s, acclaimed directors like Hype Williams and Chris Robinson helped to sculpt incredible visuals for rappers which would have audiences riveted from beginning to end. In one instance, Bad Boy dropped an astounding $4 million, or the budget of an entire indie film, on the video for Victory, with Puffy, Big, and Busta Rhymes, while recruiting major actors like Dennis Hopper and Danny DeVito to appear in it. And how
it's all fucked. What Puff say? It's all fucked up now.
Portrayed as a superhuman figure, vaulting over cars and running away from explosions. This was commonplace, whether it was Missy Elliott in The Brat floating through space, Dr. Dre and Tupac existing in a Mad Max-style apocalyptic wasteland, or the Wu-Tang spraying Killer Bees. These motion picture level productions were a crucial part of the puzzle of making these rappers seem like they were of incredible stature.
But I won't lie, there's people of this era that still care about visuals. Tyler, the Creator's always cared about visuals. Childish Gambino, when he's active, always cares about visuals. Kendrick Lamar always cares about visuals. You can find these certain people that are still are very much a visual artist. It's just that, like, where is your attention to? And it's become more of it's the rise of the middle class artists. It used to be rich. If you weren't a rich and you weren't a mainstream successful artist, you were a nobody. That's no longer the case. And that it's more of a free market than ever. It's just a reflection of the economy. I think hip hop is interconnected to the soul, thoughts, and feelings of the youth and also the inner city communities and people of color. So what is going on right now is a direct reflection of what is going on in our communities. So if there's a pushback and there's a disconnect with the artists of today, that means what we are going through in our everyday lives, which a lot of people are not valuing, which I understand. If you're an artist and you've been rich and famous, you probably don't want to be, and you probably have a big ego, you probably don't want to be told by someone not making enough money to you that you're doing something wrong, right? Because I made it and you didn't make it. But us as consumers and us as being possibly tastemakers of our own right, everyone's a tastemaker. You watching this right now, you're a tastemaker. I just have a mic, and if you made a channel, you had a mic, you'd be a tastemaker. It's just that simple. Everybody has a voice and everybody has opinion that is valid in some regard. And a lot of our perspective on current mainstream hip hop, the disconnect, those flexing on us, those having money, and it's been a separation of the haves and have-nots. So where a lot of these rappers, we would be living vicariously through them. If you're gonna flaunt money in my face, at least let that be your lifestyle. You can't flaunt money in my face and be debt, be broke, be this, be that. You have to have some sort of truth to you, right? And it used to be the voice for the voiceless. That's what hip hop used to be. Youth and rebellion culture. And all of our rebellion has been traded for financial opportunity, but not in the way that even does them a service or justice over the long haul, because they're blowing it. I don't know if we would have such a big of a problem if, this is Socialist Stilo checking in, if they were at least redistributing, or if they were at least putting their resources back into the community, at least to be like, yo, this is my art, I'm gonna do what I want to do with it. Let me at least put some of this money into projects or different artists that you want to hear from. If you don't want to hear from me, that's fine. But we're not even doing a good job of helping the youth or helping the next generation into making sure that like there is an audience for everyone. I'm pretty sure there's somebody and that's trying to get on right now that would be happy to do these things that's being spoke about in this video, from the visual standpoint, from a branding standpoint, like an MF Doom or from a Wu-Tang Clan. A lot of these things, like the people from LA, there's this group called Villain Park that was like, a lot of people out here were calling them, you had your Pro Eras, you had speaking of Joey Badass, you had your Odd Futures and stuff like that. It comes and goes in waves. And whether they stay together depends on the supply and demand. And if we speak loud enough, as if we think our voice isn't as important and people don't think, we make our own voice important and we amplify our voice, and eventually the people that are in charge of the money will shift towards that. So because people are saying we're not feeling this anymore, it's probably going to be a rise of a new hip hop, a rise of a new mainstream. So this is falling, which is a good thing. Letting the party die, as Kendrick would say, this is a good thing. It just looks shitty and fucked up right now because things have to get worse before they get better.
But it wasn't the only aspect. Even when it came to commercials for records, there was an otherworldly quality in even how albums were promoted that you simply don't see today.
Kanye! South side, outside, west side, let's ride. East side, right, east side, Lakeshore Drive, and I'm Shop Town's finest. Where you at? The whole city behind us.